بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم افتحنا فتوح العارفين ووفقنا توفيق الصالحين. اللهم علمنا بالقرآن والذكر الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. اللهم أعذنا من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. أصلح لنا شأننا كله. لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. نويت تعلم وتعليم والنفع انتفع التذكر التذكير والإفادة وما نوينا شيوخنا من صالح النيات والأعمال. I am resending the link, inshallah. Everything happens in Allah's time, subhanAllah. So let me know how the lighting is, if it needs to be a little bit brighter, if you can see the slides clearly. If this is better. Okay, mashallah. So I'm just waiting for one of you to come on to let me know how it looks, and then inshallah we'll start the class. Oh yes, I have started speaking. So, okay. Now, how is the sound? How is the sound? You guys, it doesn't show that you're online. It doesn't show that either one of you is online. Oh, okay. Try your phone. Yasin, how's the sound? I'm using the microphone, so it should be okay. So the first 5 minutes of the class, I'll have to fast forward. So it doesn't show that anybody's online, so you won't be able to hear anything. Okay, subhanAllah. So I'll start speaking because it shows I've been online for about 5 minutes here. MashaAllah. And then hopefully somebody can join online. Okay, Bismillah. So this is the chapter on the ruling of Salam. And so as you all know, I have to get my bearings straight, that it is that starting the Salam is actually a sunnah, and it's a sunnah kifaya. So if you're sitting in a group and one person says it, then it suffices for the rest. And then the other person has to respond. There's a few things, subhanAllah, Sheikh Sadiq had mentioned that they might be sunnah, but their reward is higher than a fard. And Salam is one of them, subhanAllah. And he mentioned that wudu is another one, is to do it in the time when you don't have to do wudu, so the prayer time hasn't come in. Because if you think about it, because he was saying it includes the fard in it. So if you do a wudu before the prayer time has come in, you don't have to have wudu. But if you intend, if somebody uses a restroom and then they go and do wudu and the prayer time hasn't come in, it would be a sunnah, it would be recommended, but it's higher than to wait till the prayer time has come in, subhanAllah. And the salam also, it's higher to initiate it. And I feel some of these things just really break the nafs, to actually start the salam with people who maybe have actually given just you're having a hard time with, given not necessarily very pleasant to be around, and then you're like, okay, bismillah, I'm just going to do the sunnah. So it's encompassing the fard. And the third thing he mentioned was if you loan somebody money, it's wajib for them to pay it off, but it's sunnah to actually write it off and just to say it's forgiven. So that takes care of their wajib, and it takes care, and then it's higher because you didn't have to do that. And the same for the wudu, it takes care of the fard. So when the prayer time comes in, you already have wudu, so you've done the fard. SubhanAllah. And something I wanted to bring up, it's sort of a modern thing that people will say. They'll say salams, or I hear a lot of that. So I'd asked Sheikh Sadiq about that. Is one considered to have done the sunnah of saying the salam when one says salams? And he said no. So subhanAllah, it's assalamu alaikum, and then specifically he mentions بصيغة الجمع. You say it in the plural form, whether it's one person, one Muslim, or more. Because he said لأن الواحد كالجماعة لوجود الحفظ معه, because one Muslim is like a group because of the presence of the angels. And he said in the response, you say wa alaykum salam biwaw wa tashriq. So you say wa alaykum salam. There's something that's kind of it's interesting. One of my shaykh was commenting that a lot of people don't know how to say salam, because if you say salam to them, they'll also say assalamu alaikum. SubhanAllah, something very simple. And it's the greeting of the Muslim. It's one of the ways we're distinguished. Because he says in the past that people would say hayyak Allah, I guess may you live a long time, or al sabah al khair, they would say good morning. So this is our greeting, and unfortunately where people are shortening it. So, do the full greeting so you get the reward of actually of the salam. Sins, it's just an easy way to remove sins. And he says, Assalamu alayk is not considered a salam. And the response is, Wa alaikum salam. He does say, subhanAllah, just that shows you, they go into all this detail. And he has this whole chapter on Babun fi bayani hukm salam. Just the importance of saying salam to people. And it's okay to say salamun alaykum. And I was just thinking, there's this hadith about the end of time that the salam will be only to the ahlul ma'rifah. People will say only salam to the people that they know. So they go into a group and they'll say salam only to the people they know. And subhanAllah, I've gone into a group and said salam to everybody, and somebody said to me, oh, do you know them? And it's like, subhanAllah, that's just interesting. So may Allah give us tawfiq to revive a losing sunnah. People, I know in the religious circles, people are surprised probably when I say stuff like this. I've seen a lot of this, in some of the cultural groups. People that grew up Muslim, where people may not say salam to each other, or they may just say salam to people they know. And again, the salam to a group is sunnah kifaya, and response from the group is fard kifaya. So again, if one person does it to the group, and then one person responds from the group, that's enough. And you can say in the response, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And he said that's the extent of it. And that's as far as you go. SubhanAllah, I was thinking the story of the Prophet ﷺ, and how he was walking with Sayyidah Aisha, and the Jews, one of the Jews said to him, Assalamu alaikum. And Assalamu alaikum means death upon you. And Sayyidah Aisha got really upset, and of course it makes perfect sense, it's Rasulullah, and just what a wretched thing to say. And so she said, and upon you, and the curse of Allah upon you. And so subhanAllah, and so the Prophet ﷺ very gently corrected her, basically told her that Allah Ta'ala will not answer them in what they've said, and He'll answer me in what I said. So, you just say alayka. Wa alayka, and upon you. And then the sunnah is, when you're greeting people, is to actually shake hands. And that's a dying sunnah also, to shake hands. There was a group that came from Yemen, and they went and they visited the Prophet ﷺ, and it was the sunnah of the Yemenis to shake hands, and the Prophet ﷺ really liked that. And so it is a sunnah. It's considered a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, anything that happened in his presence. And he tacitly approved it by not saying anything, or just, in this case, he really liked it. You'll consider the sunnah. أفعاله وأقواله وتقريراته, right? That's considered hadith. So hugging is actually makruh, and of course this is the same gender, because it's haram to if it's the opposite gender. So neck to neck. And I asked around about that, because I know it's in some of the cultures, and I even asked one of the Shafi'i shuyukh, and I couldn't really find it, and I don't know about the Hanbali madhab, in any madhab where it's sunnah to actually hug. And they pretty much, what I found is that there's no hadith about hugging, except when Sayyidina Ja'far returned from Habasha at the Fath of Khaybar, at the opening of Khaybar. And subhanAllah, I was just thinking that the Prophet said, I don't know which I'm happier about biqudum Ja'far or bi Fath Khaybar, subhanAllah. And that was his love for Sayyidina Ja'far, that he didn't know which made him happier, subhanAllah. And when, Sheikh Salam was saying that there's this someone who sees the Prophet ﷺ regularly in dreams, and he was saying that the Prophet ﷺ is very sad these days. And so one of those blessed Syrians who sees him in her dreams. And so, he said one of the ways to make him happy is to write the surah, Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina, because it's the surah that the Prophet ﷺ talked about how it made him really, really happy, because it's about Fath Makkah. And it's before the actual Fath happened. Right, but it talks about the Fath that will happen, and it made the Prophet ﷺ really happy. So I thought, subhanAllah, to recite that surah just to say, Ya Rasulullah, here, inshallah, this will make you happy. SubhanAllah. So hugging is not, again, it's makruh, so it's discouraged to do it. Sheikh Sadiqa told me, if it's in the culture of people, don't push people away. And so he, it's not haram, but certainly for us to initiate the handshake. So what I do is when I see people, I'll usually try to stick my hand out so that it just avoids, it kind of, one can get away from the hugging that way. It's just to be proactive and say, okay, I'm going to start the sunnah. And then if sometimes people will hug and it may not be neck to neck, inshallah, it's not as bad. Okay, and then he mentioned some other adab about the rider says salam to the one who's walking. Right, so I guess by analogy, then somebody who's sitting in the car, if they're seeing a Muslim pass by, they would say salam to the one walking, and the walking to the one sitting. SubhanAllah. And then shaking hands is recommended, and ruling on kissing hand of a Muslim. So he says, كره مالك رحمه الله تقبيل اليد. So Imam Malik didn't like, he discouraged the kissing of the hand. And then except, as Sheikh Saad mentioned, that Sidi Dardir, who's one of the major Maliki scholars, well-known Maliki scholars, he has, I think this commentary is Sidi Dardir's. So I'm pretty sure he has a commentary on either the Risālah, anyway, on some of the other fiqh texts he has commentary. So Sidi Dardi said, إِلَّا مَنْ تُرْجَى بَرَكَتُهُ مِثْلَ الشَّيْخ or walidan, except the one whom you're hopeful of their barakah. فَلَا حَرَجَ فِيهِ, so there's no problem with that. And so there's all these stories in Sirah about the Prophet, the Sahaba kissing the hands and the feet of the Prophet. So I want to mention a few. I'm reading from Muhammad Rasulullah. And so if people do that with, if somebody's Ahl al-Bayt, especially if they're righteous Ahl al-Bayt, or certainly parents, then there's definitely room for that. And this is the story of Talha ibn Bara'a. He really loved the Prophet ﷺ a lot, and he said one day he met the Prophet ﷺ, and he began to get close to him, and he kind of yelled, "Saqu bi Rasulillah." Lasik is a glue, so basically, he just got very close to the Prophet ﷺ, and he began to kiss his feet, subhanAllah, and he said, "Ya Rasulullah, murni bima ahbabta." Command me to whatever you love. وَلَا أَعْصِي لَكَ أَمْرًا, and I won't disobey your command. And the Prophet ﷺ was really amazed by this. And Sheikh Samir said that Talha ibn al-Bara, I might have told his story before, he was someone who loved the Prophet ﷺ a lot, and he was young, and the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned that when he's dying, he had told his family, subhanAllah, and this is another prophecy, that tell me, and because the Prophet ﷺ wanted to come while he was passing away. But Talha ibn al-Bara, when he knew he was dying, he told his family not to tell the Prophet ﷺ, because subhanAllah, Medina was, you know, there were areas that were safe for the Prophet ﷺ, and there were areas that were not safe for the Prophet ﷺ. So Talha, out of his intense love for the Prophet ﷺ, even though who would not want to see the Prophet ﷺ as they're passing away, he didn't want the Prophet ﷺ to risk his life at night to come see him. And so he passed away, and they told the Prophet ﷺ the next day, and they told him why, and the Prophet ﷺ went and prayed over him at his grave, and he said, Ya Allah, meet Talha, and you're pleased with him, and أنت تضحك عليه وهو يضحك عليك. ضحك as figuratively, meaning that you're pleased with him and he is pleased with you, subhanAllah. That's what intense love can do. And that's sacrifice. You know, he sacrificed something that he loved because of his intense love. A lot of times we think we have intense love, but we're not willing to make the sacrifice that we need that would make the Prophet ﷺ proud of us. SubhanAllah. So Allah give us tawfiq to do that. He tells another story about a group. Imam al-Bayhaqi narrates this one, and he says the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to the Sahaba, and he said, shall come upon you a group from here, and the Prophet says, ha huna, from this direction, rakbun, a group of riders, hum min khayri ahli al-mashriq. Imagine, like the Prophet ﷺ saying that. They're from the best of the people of the East. Hum min khayri ahli al-mashriq. Sayattali alaykum min ha huna. So they'll come upon you from this direction. There'll be people approaching from this direction. Rakbun, so a group of riders. Hum min khayri ahl al-mashriq. SubhanAllah. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, of course he wanted to see who are these people, because they were constantly vying with each other to get ahead in the akhirah. You know, just as people are vying to get ahead in the dunya, they want a bigger house, and somebody has this, they want the same thing, new car. And so the Sahaba were vying for the akhirah. So khair, you know, so the khairiyah would be only for the akhirah if the Prophet said that. So Sayyidina Umar went out and he met 13 riders, and he said, who are you? Man al-qawm? Qalu min Bani Abdul Qais. We're from Bani Abdul Qais. And so he said, man aqdamakum hadhihi al-bilad at-tijara. So Sayyidina Umar said, like, what brought you here to this city? At-tijara, was it trade? Because so you want to make sure, you know, what his intentions are so important. Was it trade that brought you here? And they said no. So then he said, Sayyidina Umar, he said, Amma inna nabiyya qad dhakarakum anifan. The Prophet just mentioned you. ثم مشى معهم حتى أتوا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. قال عمر للقوم هذا صاحبكم. He said, هذا صاحبكم الذي تريدون. He said, this is your companion whom you want. فرموا بأنفسهم عن ركائبهم. And I remember Sheikh Samir mentioning this story. He said they threw themselves off their riding beasts. فمنهم من مشى إليه, and there's some walked to him. ومنهم من هرول, and there's some who hastened, cooking his space. ومنهم من سعى, and there's some who ran to him. حتى أتوا النبي. And they say that, and in another narration he mentions, so one of the Zari ibn Amir was one of these riders, and he said, when we came to Medina, we rushed, we got off our riding beasts, and we began to kiss the hands of the Prophet ﷺ and his feet. And this is why he's mentioning it in this section. And subhanAllah, and they say that the stench, because they had been riding for so long, for weeks. Imagine like riding through the desert, Yemen, hot desert, and you're going to be smelly. And so majority of them apparently didn't smell, didn't change, They were stinky, and that the stench hurt the Prophet ﷺ, but he wouldn't have said anything. One man from them, وَانْتَظَرَ الْأَشَّجُ حَتَّى أَتَى عَيْبَتَهُ. So there, Al-Ashaj waited, and he went to his small box, and he put on his, so he changed clothes, white clothes. He wore on 2 white garments, and then he walked to the Prophet ﷺ, and he took his hand and he kissed it. And so the Prophet ﷺ, subhanAllah, and sometimes, you know, correcting somebody can be done indirectly by praising the person who did the thing that you wanted them to do. So he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inna fika khaslatain. And in a narration, I think it's khallatain. Yuhibbuhum Allahu wa rasuluhu. You have 2 attributes, khaslatain, right? So this is the dual. Inna fika, it's mansub bi inna. Inna fika khaslatain. Yuhibbuhum Allahu wa rasuluhu. You have 2 characteristics that Allah and His Messenger love, the importance of love. Al-hilm wal-ana. Al-hilm is forbearance, wal-ana, with the tha marbuta at the end. Ana is where you deliberate. So you make your intention and you think about what you're doing. So it's not a lackadaisical mannerism, but it's just deliberating what you're doing. So he probably made an intention. He changed his clothes. You know, he thought about it and went and kissed the hands of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's not that he wanted to see him any less, but he thought about it. And this doesn't contradict the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Afdalul bir ajaluhu." The most virtuous of righteous actions are the ones that are the quickest. But that's still assuming that one has, you know, made the intention, one's deliberated upon what needs to do, and one's thought it out, but not rushed, where there's not much presence of heart. And so he says, Ya Rasulullah, خلتين تخلقت بهما أم جبلني الله عليهما. SubhanAllah, he wanted to know, like, are these, was I created, did I work to acquire them? So some of us, you know, we may not have these, we may not be forbearant, and we may not be deliberate in our actions, but the خلقت means that he struggled to acquire this akhlaq. أو جبلني الله عليهما. Oh Allah, you know, they've been a part of me. That's just rizq. Jabalani Allahu, it's just something that's innate. Bal jabakallahu alayhima. So the Prophet said that Bal jabarakallahu alayhim, meaning you're just made like that. And subhanAllah, so he thanked Allah. Alhamdulillahi alladhi jabalani ala khaslatain yuhibbuhum Allahu wa rasuluhu. You know, he just thanked Allah that Allah made him like that. Jabalani, same root as Jabal, mountain. So he's just, that's like, it's a solid attribute in him. I have 2 attributes that Allah and His Messenger love. SubhanAllah. So there's a lot. He has a lot of stories in here about this, you know, the Sahaba kissing the hands and the feet. I have also one story on my blog where I've been posting my stories. On a Bedouin who actually kisses the hands and the feet of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and then to the people of the book you say alayka, upon you, right? That's the response. If they say assalamu alaikum, you say alayka. He just says alayka without the waw. And then every time you enter a house, you know, whether it's open or closed, you should say, should I enter, 3 times. And subhanAllah, I really saw this in action. We had an Arabic teacher who would come to my apartment. There was a couple of us studying with him, and he would stand at the bottom of the stairs, because my apartment has like these very steep stairs to his just jihad, mashallah, to the 2 doors, one open to my apartment and one open to the landlord. So he would stand at the bottom of the stairs, even though I had a door at the landing, but he wouldn't come up, and he would say, adkhul. He would say, assalamu alaikum, adkhul, and he would wait, and then he would come up. You know, because the door can be open, it could be hot. He didn't want to come upon anyone. And it's very important to teach the youth this. You know, and the Prophet mentioned that to a Sahabi. He was taking care of his mother,
And he said, he was taking care of his mother, and like he asked about doing it every time. And the Prophet ﷺ basically told him, do you want to see her undressed, right? So when the youth come of age, and this is mentioned in the Quran, that you should, when they need to seek permission to enter a room, a home. Okay, and then he says, visiting the sick is recommended. There's so many hadith about, finding Allah, figuratively speaking, when you visit the sick. Allah give us tawfiq. We live very far away from each other, most of us, so unfortunately it's not something that is done as often as it should. Allah give us tawfiq to revive that, because there's elderly, there's sick, who we need their dua. Al-barakatu ma'a akabirikum. That's a hadith. Or kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the barakah is with your akabirikum. It's translated as elderly, but it also has the meaning of great, right? Because kabir means, they translate it as elderly, but it also means great, right? Al-barakah, the barakah is with your elderly. They may not always be right, and that's when something Shaykh Salman had said, but the barakah is with them. So sometimes we need to listen to them just because the barakah is with them. SubhanAllah. Unless they're asking us to do haram. But sometimes we just have to, submit to what they're saying, because the barakah is with them. Al barakatu ma'a akabirikum. And that's one of the reasons we are losing barakah, is because we're neglecting the elderly. SubhanAllah. And then visiting the sick, of course. So especially if they're elderly and sick. And then he mentions if two people are speaking privately, SubhanAllah, it's just, it's so important to not break the heart of the believer. That it's, so even if you're like in a car, wherever you are in a group, just make sure that there isn't a third person there who's kind of there, and they would be, and you don't have their permission, because they might think that you're speaking about them, or they just might feel left out, unless they give you permission. But I just still think, especially in this day and age, with hearts being divided, there being so much division, that one needs to make that extra effort to not speak in another language and not speak in low tone, so that it can, so that on the chance that it would hurt the other person's feelings, and they might just feel left out. And then he mentioned some du'as, because he's, mashallah, this is the second last chapter of the Risālah, so he's mentioning different things that are really important. So he says, du'as for sleep. There's if you have reflections of the pearls, there's the du'as that are mentioned there. I can send them to anybody if they want me to send them, if they don't have reflections of pearls, but it has a du'a for sleep. And of course, reciting Ayatul Kursi before sleeping, and the 3 quls, Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, right? You can recite all of them together, and then just blow in your hand with a little bit of spittle and rub over yourself. Right? He's going to mention that in the other chapter, in the next chapter. Or you can do Qul huwallahu ahad 3 times, the next one 3 times, the next one 3 times, and do the same thing with blowing in your hand, rubbing over yourself as much as you can. They say as the especially the parts that are exposed, you want to rub on those. And palm under cheek and left thigh over right. And then the du'as. And the last 2 ayahs of Amana Rasul, right? So if you recite that regularly, shaitan won't enter your house. And that's really important, especially for married couples, to recite Amana Rasul and Ayatul Kursi, because the shaitan works full time with people who are married. So you have to be aware of that. And we've been given he's our enemy, so, he can see us from where we can't see him. And so we need to, but we have, Allah Ta'ala given us ammunition. We just need to use it. So Aman Rasul, Ayatul Kursi, the 3 quls before you sleep. Don't leave that. There's a story, I don't know how sound it is. I remember one of the Habaib mentioning it. But it's perfectly fine to mention even weaker narrations. It's just for virtuous acts. The Prophet ﷺ, one day he was walking to the store and he saw a little girl. She was a slave girl and she was going to the souk. Her mistresses had sent her and she'd lost the money that they had given her and she was crying. So the Prophet ﷺ gave her some of the money. He was going to go buy something, but of course he preferred somebody else. And then he saw a beggar on the way and gave the rest of what he had. And then he was coming back because he didn't have any money now. And she was still crying and he asked her and she said, I'm just really late and I'm afraid that my mistresses will get upset. And so she indicated that she wanted the Prophet ﷺ to walk back with her. And so he did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to what I heard. And he said, when they got to the door, so he said, Assalamu alaikum 3 times. So this is what this salam reminded me of the story. And the Sahabiyat, they were so, imagine, having the Prophet ﷺ at your door, they were so thrilled that he was there, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that each time he would say Assalamu alaikum, they would say in a soft tone, Wa alaikum salam, so that they had responded to the salam, they knew their fiqh, but they didn't want him to leave, so they would respond very softly. And the 3rd time he said it, they said it out loud. So he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he heard them and he asked them, what happened? Why did you not say it right the first time? So they told him that we wanted the barakah of your salam. So they wanted him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to say salam 3 times. SubhanAllah. Just cashing in, in every moment. And so he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that, I'm here because of to do shafa'a, basically to intercede on behalf of this girl. And they were it was just such a blessing for them, and they were just so happy. They said she's free for the sake of Allah, so they freed her. And that's like, a lot of times we can't conceptualize, and we think, okay, someone, sometimes you might think, what's the big deal, she should be free anyway. But that's like giving up your car because this person would run errands for you, go out in the heat for you. So it means like going to the store. They didn't have refrigerators, so that means like going out every day in the heat of the desert to go to the store. And so to give up somebody like that, it's a huge sacrifice. So Allahu Alam, but inshallah it is a hadith. But this salam reminded me of that story, subhanAllah. Okay, and then the next chapter is on treatment. And he, in this chapter on salam, he mentions some of the du'as. And so again, I can, if somebody doesn't have them, I can send them. Like he says, Allahumma inni aslamtu nafsi ilayk, wa alja'tu dhahri ilayk, wa fawwadtu amri ilayk, wa wajjahtu wajhi ilayk, rahbatan minka wa raghbatan ilayk. La manja wa la malja minka illa ilayk, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Amantu bi kitabika alladhi anzaltah, wa bi rasulika alladhi أو بنبيك الذي أرسلت فاغفر لي ما قدمت وما أخرت وما أسررت وما أعلنت أنت إلهي لا إله إلا أنت ربي قني عذابك يوم تبعث عبادك. So that's one of the narration. I've actually memorized something different. So, okay, and then he goes into the chapter on treatment. Maybe we won't get to all of it, but hopefully we can do some of it. Okay, so the chapter on treatment. So I'm just going to switch to the Arabic. Okay, ta'aluj. So ruqya, a lot of, people will ask about that. What is a ruqya? That's the first thing he mentions here, right? Is ruqya, it's seeking, ruqya is reciting du'as or words with the intention of healing. And I have a separate slide on this. I'll get to that in a minute, inshallah. So it's istirqa, because somebody seeking the ruqya. So Imam Badi, who's a very well-known Maliki scholar, he says there's no difference of opinion regarding seeking ruqya. So you can either write them, they would write it with za'fran, um, reciting the words. You can recite them. There's no difference between names of Allah and His book, right? And then there's some difference of opinion about some of the other ones I'll mention in a minute. And you know, there's a story about a Sahabi. I thought it was Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Anyway, they were traveling in the desert, and they went by a group of mushrikun, and they asked them to host them, right? And the mushrikun said no, they refused. And subhanAllah, Allah Ta'ala had it to where the Sayyid, the master of that tribe, got bitten by it was either a scorpion or a snake, subhanAllah. And subhanAllah, they knew something was, you know, they knew enough to go to the Sahaba, and they asked them, one of them went and they said, can you heal our Sayyid? So the Sahabi went, and he used Surah Al-Fatiha. So sometimes the Sahaba would do things that, you know, there was no precedent in the Sunnah for that. So, but they, you know, obviously they knew enough of the Sharia to where they knew it was within the bounds of the Sharia. So likewise, if scholars do something similar that was within the bounds of the Sharia, but there's no precedent in the Sunnah, it's still within the Sharia. So he recites the Fatiha, and the man is healed immediately. And I think, if I remember correctly, actually, they agreed to a payment, and you can do that if the person is healed immediately. So that's istirqa. So that's like one of the first times. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him how he knew, because he went and told, when they reached Medina, the Prophet ﷺ asked him, and so it was just something that Allah Ta'ala had put in his heart. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the next slide before I do tamima, because I have a separate slide on istirqa. Okay, so just look at this, the left section. So it's permissible to use speech of Allah, attributes of Allah. So like Imam Badi said, there's no khilaf about speech of Allah and attributes of Allah. But scholars also did say you can use the hadith or words whose meanings are known. But then in these last two, you're going to get into some difference of opinion. But you have to have certainty that the ruqya itself has no effect. And this is really important, because we're living in an age where we have so many asbab, so many means opened up for us, that sometimes I have to remind myself. And one of my teachers, he was sick, and you know, we were, and alhamdulillah, some of us were involved with his treatment, and he reminded me, he said, Sayra hadihi asbab faqat, these are just means, like, don't, you know, indicating to me that, you know, Allah is the musabbib. It's not one of the names of Allah, but He is the musabbib. He is the one who creates the means, and Allah creates the shifa. At the time that we take the medication has no effect. That's the Sunni belief. SubhanAllah. You know, and it's really beautiful. We're studying sacred knowledge here, that in Aqidah they also taught us that Allah actually creates the understanding. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. And so somebody could study something, Allah protect us from that, and Allah doesn't create the understanding, and it's not there, subhanAllah. And that's why the ulama, if they were stuck on something, they would make tawbah, or they would, you know, recite, they would go pray, and subhanAllah, because they knew that Allah creates the understandings. So sometimes you can study stuff, but the understanding is just not there. Sometimes people will say, well, I'm not that intelligent, but it's not a static thing, you know, subhanAllah. Allah can create the understanding in whomever He will, subhanAllah. I mean, I've understood stuff that I was like, subhanAllah, you know, alhamdulillah, it's just, alhamdulillah, Allah created the understanding for those things. So these are the conditions with which you can use ruqya. I'll come to the evil eye a little bit, inshallah, in a bit. Okay, going back to this slide. So is this clear about the ruqya? Inshallah, it's clear. Okay, then